In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Good morning. Good morning. Good to be back with you after healing. I feel much better, thank you. This is part one of a two-part sermon. Oftentimes on a Saturday, and I'm in a certain place, I talked to Julie about it, and she said, no, that's too much. You can thank her for that. Part one of a two-part sermon. I'll tell you where the second part is going to go, and this is also being recorded for your edification and for your colleagues' edification to create a teaching foundation for part two. Sound good?
Good.
Oftentimes when we talk about our life, we use certain metaphors or analogy to give expressions of our life. One particular analogy or metaphor I like is life as a journey. Now we have to be careful, and I'll caution you about certain words as I talk about the metaphor, but our journey as if on a pathway. Now there's a problem with that, because if I put you on a journey on a pathway, much like the walk this morning, you think the one that finishes the fastest is the one who's the best. And that's a problem. That's a problem with how we live life. But suffice it to say, we'll use the idea that our life is a journey. And there is some semblance of a pathway, that we have this sense that we are here in this place where my feet stand, and there's this animated, energetic thing that goes on in our life that says, move, dance, step. That animation is what I call an oscillation of life. Now, when I say oscillation, I love this, and Donna, I appreciate it so much, because I didn't know what that word was until Donna working with me this week on vocabulary. I know that the fan moved back and forth. What you call it, I didn't know. As a young man, on our weekend retreat as a family, our place did not have AC, but it had an oscillating fan. And somehow as I looked into that fan, it moved back and forth. I could sense a natural rhythm. And at a very young age, I could feel the mystical pull of the fan oscillating, of going from side to side. It just mesmerized me in a way. So much so that when I feel myself stuck today, I'll stare into an oscillating fan. The oscillations of life are the animation of the energy that I'm talking about, and what are they? You see, it's not the either or. That's what the West does. The West takes the oscillation and says you're either on the right or you're on the... Have you heard that before? Oh, I'm not talking politically. But you've heard it before. It works politically too. So this oscillation, we hear about them lots of. We say there is dark, and then there's... And that's part two of the sermon. Because that particular oscillation in life, of both and, light and dark, we get stuck there in that oscillation, and we don't know what to do with that energy. But there's lots of others. There's in, and there's... You see, now you're getting it. And so we could keep going. Even Jesus talks about flesh and spirit. Right? We see this as flesh and spirit. And so there's tons of oscillations. These exist for you as an animating energy to your life on the journey. The East has done a thing called the yin and the... And do you know what the picture is of? It's, I just thought it was, this white and black whatever. Do you know what it's of? Two fish. I think perhaps carp. That chase each other's tail. Go look at the yin and the yang. You go, oh, that is a fish there. And they chase each other's tail. This is how the fan moves. This is the energy you get on the journey. But a problem is that we tend to say things either or, but it's really both what? It's really both And. That's really tough to learn because you brought your Western mindset to this teaching today. But I want you to know they both coexist with each other and create energy for your journey. Now on this journey, on this pathway, if you allow that, on this pathway and this energy, one of the first things we begin to discover is that I am human. In human form. And our humanness has a particular presence on this journey. That still oscillates with human and spirit. But we're in this human form. And we tend to do this particular thing with fear and desire. What do you fear? What do you desire? They're cousins of each other, fear and desire. The Buddhists have a great way as they deal with desire. They say, you want to defeat desire, don't have it. But we have these fears and these desires. And we go through this process of creating a hologram. Do you know what that is? It's a three-dimensional projection. And so we project this hologram forward. And we see it. And this hologram comes from this place of fear and desire. So much so that we think it's solid. And it does something to our journey. In a sense, it keeps us from the journey. It keeps us from life itself. It keeps us from the animation energy that was given to you to start the journey. And we have a relationship with the hologram so much so that we can't really see anything else. What do you fear? What are your desires? I had to ask myself devotionally this morning, it's fair that if I should stand in this place, I should say what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid that I can't provide for my children. I've chosen a career that the earning potential is pretty capped. Right? And so I have this fear of not being able to provide, of not being able to do the things that I think I should do as a father. So it's created a hologram in my life. Maybe you too. Maybe to use this as an example to say, if that's your fear, maybe you say, well, my relationship with the hologram says that in order to deal with this fear and this desire to provide, I'm going to work more. Because working more is going to provide an economic necessity, which is going to provide for the things that I projected that my children need. I'm working with somebody spiritually, and it was really funny because I do a lot through emailing, and he was giving me his spiritual reflection, and he was actually on the Potomac this week, and he could feel the presence of George Washington and all he does as a battle planner, and he said he came up with the realization that my title doesn't matter to my family. He said, I've come to know the only thing that matters to my family is that they matter to me. But you see, what happens is that we become preoccupied with the hologram of our fear and our desire. And not only is 40 hours enough, we go 60. I don't want to see a show of hands. How many people go more than 60? And some people in spiritual direction say, well, Chris, how much should I work? I think 20 hours. Right. And they say, what am I going to do with my other 60 hours? Have you ever tried staring into a fan? Right. Then you get it. Huh. Right. You see, isn't it kind of funny In my own fear, if I applied the idea that I was going to address my fears and desires by working more because I was afraid that I couldn't take care of my family, guess who I spend less time with? That's just one area. The question is, what are you afraid of? Where are your desires? Where is this hologram projection in your pathway? It is an energy consumer of all that is given to your life to animate it. Does that make sense? It's tough. Because if you want to know about the love that God's talking about, you have to say, where does this love come from and where does it intersect? You see, because we created the hologram, I love it when I work with some gurus and I want to complain. I've learned not to do that. I hold my cards close these days. But when I want to complain, I typically hear back, well, you did it. And then I'm insulted. Then the guru did their job. Good, you're insulted. Now do something with that. You see, we have 4 principal ways. Like there are 4 principal points of navigation over land. What are they? To be bold. North, south, everybody help her?
East, west.
Right, you get a star for the day. So we have these 4 principal points of navigation. Equally, because of our humanness and our projection of our hologram, we have created 4 principal ways for dealing with the hologram. And consequently, because there are 4 principal ways we deal with the hologram, the fears and desires of our life, they become the 4 principal ways that we deal with relationships in our life. So much so that we end up blaming the relationships for our hologram. That's why the guru tells me, you did it. Well, I didn't do it, so-and-so did it. Right. Now, the 4 principal ways are this. And there are variances on 4 principal ways. Like north has north, east, and so on, right? There are variances of the 360 degrees for how you can travel. There are also variances for how we are predisposed in our human side to deal with our hologram. This thing that seems like a solid obstacle, but isn't. The first one is yield. In a sense, we can say, well, work just demands that I work 60 hours, and so therefore I'm going to do it. You just yield to it. With no really conscious thought about it at all. You just yield. How many yielders are here today? How many people pleasers are here today? The second way is through manipulation. We see the hologram, we go, oh, it's there. We think it's real, so I'm going to manipulate it in such a way that I think I'm going to get what I want. I don't know what, we can make stuff up. This is for your application. Maybe I work 80 hours a week, but I put my golf clubs and my oscillating fan in the trunk just in case. I may have found a place to plug in my fan and play golf. You see, that's a manipulation. Instead of saying, well, I'm going to take 3 days off and go play golf. And I'm going to plug my fan in the golf cart. Yeah, I'm just making this up. But we become manipulative about the hologram in my life. How many of you are manipulators? The other one, another direction, is exiting. We see the image of this hologram, and we say, I quit. I'm done. I deal with this in the church a lot, because they create a hologram of something. I'm like, well, that's just not true. That's not real. Well, it is true, and it is real. I'm going to another church. Okay. And we do this in lots of places of our lives. We go, well, I just quit. I'm done. How many quitters do we have? The fourth way, and I see this a lot in this community, I can experience it a lot, is the way of aggression. We see the hologram, and we think the way to deal with it is to be aggressive. We beat it into submission. We deal with it in an aggressive way that we think we're overtaking it. It isn't real to begin with, but we become really aggressive. It was amazing in what I did in special operations, the first phase of special operations. We did a lot with going into buildings and houses, and we had to have conversations with certain people. I was a part of that interrogating team that came in after we went into the house. The question is, Chris, how did you get into the house? Well, the first phase of my life with a particular team I was with, not to be mentioned, they do a good job at what they do, is that they use C4. Does anyone know what that is? It explodes the door open. Or they have a 12-gauge shotgun. Everyone ever shot one of those? It does a pretty good job on a door. Or they have a battering ram. Didn't like that because that was too heavy to carry, and they always said, hey, Chris, you carry the battering ram. And there the door goes off. Those are what I call the door kickers. As I got older, I went to another agency, and we did planning about how we're going to get into a house. And I just realized on our way to the house, nobody talked about how we're going to make entry. And so I said, the guy next to me, I said, how are we going to make entry? He said, what? What do you mean? How are we going to get in the house? Then he went, oh, I know what you used to do. You used to blow the door open. Well, yeah. And he'd say, well, we're just going to knock. I never felt so silly in my life. And he wanted to keep going with the point. He says, what happens when somebody knocks at your door? I open it. And he said, yes, we're going to knock. 10 out of 10 times knocking worked. And oh, by the way, you taxpayers didn't have to pay for a door. You see, aggression is really about door kicking. We think that the way to get something done is we kick in a door. We think that's the way to deal with the hologram in our life of fear and desire. And so we become very aggressive. I see that a lot. Like, why are we so aggressive? Well, we got to get it done. Well, why don't we knock? Knocking doesn't work. Not fast enough. Well, who said anything about speed? Well, it just does. Get out of the way. Give me C4. Somebody could be standing on the other side of that door. Well, they shouldn't be. They should know better. You see where I'm going with this? And then there's variances. You know, we have people who exit and manipulate. You know, people that say, I'm going to exit, but I'm going to tell you why. Well, just leave. No, that's not good enough. I'm going to exit and then tell you why. You see? You understand there's variances of it all. But see, this is the four ways. Now, I don't want you to be confused, because there are what we call the fourth way when it comes to enlightenment that's different than what I'm talking about here. Because Jesus proposes a fifth way, which is really the fourth way of enlightenment. So I don't want you confused on that. If you started exploring the path to enlightenment, you might come across the fourth way and you say, well, that's a part of the navigational system. But it isn't. So Jesus proposes a fourth way, which in my example is really the fifth way. He proposes the idea that there's a different angle. There is a spiritual pursuit. There is a particular relationship on your journey that you're going to have, but it's not supposed to be with the hologram. You see, the system you devised was a very human system. And I want to show you the spiritual way to freedom, a way that you can understand that you're loved, which is really at the heart of the problem. Is that in this human journey, we don't know how much we're loved and the abundance of it. So we start off believing that there's a deficit, and so there comes the fear and the desire to have it be something other than we think that it is. Are you with me? So along the fourth way of the awakened journey, which is the fifth way in my example, It's about awareness. And that begins now. It begins when you begin to say, what am I afraid of? What do I desire? And what is my relationship to it? How have I learned to deal with my fear and my desire? What ways on this navigational system do I use? Somebody came to me today quite confessionally and said, Chris, I'm a manipulator. And the moment they said it, they were free of it. Awareness of where you are is the first step. What are you afraid of? What do you desire? How have you chosen to deal with this hologram in your life? The second place is that when you are able to say what it is, you created a space from it. You see, you distance yourself far enough from the hologram that you can breathe. I know how important that is after heart surgery. And you can begin to look around. And you look around at other people. And you say, you too. And you realize that we've all been on this navigational map together. And it creates a great sense of compassion. Because when we look at each other, David, we say that we're so driven to be caretakers for our family, that we work 80 hours a week, and we stop being the very thing that they needed. You and I become brothers. And then when we see each other, we say, how's it going? And we're not talking about the scotch we drank. Okay, we do. We have a scotch while we're talking about it. And we say, how's that going? You say, I'm still a little afraid. But at least I'm aware of it. And I say, me too. And something happens. That dynamic piece of love begins to take over. It becomes the very hunger point. Why people want to come here to experience that kind of authenticity. And the third thing is that when you get to that point, ultimately David's going to look at me and say, Chris, I gave the fear away. I gave it away. And the hologram disappears. I no longer have the desires. Either way, I'm fine. Which was the theme of last year's mission trip. Either way, I'm fine. I don't have a desire or an investment in it. Either way, I'm fine. Either way, I'm fine. Either way, I'm fine. It is an amazing thing. C.S. Eliot writes, and it's in other places too, and it's a part of the problem because when I talk about a pathway in this community, the assumption is the one who finishes first is the best. The assumption is the best grades do the best thing for the person. They go to the best colleges. They get the best jobs. And then they have a certain hologram that working how many hours now? They go, they get a job, they get married. 60, 80. And I was kidding at 8 o'clock, and I said, then they come here and they have to hear this sermon. What kind of hologram is that? And when we learn to give it away, it's not about what we think. That's all an illusion. Maya, illusion. It's a hologram. Then we know love and freedom T.S. Eliot writes, when you stop your searching, you come back to the place where you started, and you know it for the first time.